colour scheme of cream and blue as opposed to the old colour scheme of orange and blue. And the reason for changing the colour scheme was to get customers used to the new colour scheme, which would be on the new worldwide 1000 series range that were to be launched in '64. So this was the earlier colour scheme that both the Major and the Dexter and the Super Dexter were kitted out in. The blue and orange, the Empire blue and orange colour scheme. Bob's got a springtime cultivator on the back that we saw in the cultivation display, whereas Bob Blythe from Cooper with another Super Dexter. There's a Kongskilde blower sucker unit on it, which we'll talk about later on when it comes back in the ring for some of our grain displays. And then, before we had the Super Dexter, or running alongside the Super Dexter, was the plain old standard Dexter, which Willie Simpson's at the wheel of here. This was a very, very popular tractor in its time. It was produced to compete against Ferguson and latterly Massey Ferguson's small grey tractors in the little 35. It had a very similar engine, a standard built engine that produced the engine for Ford. Different fuel pump and a few other little differences, and its longer wheelbase was probably make it a slightly better ploughing tractor than the 35. The 35 had better hydraulics. Now, George Melville, if you wish he hadn't put the cab on now, a beautiful sunny day, he put the cab on this to go ploughing in the winter time. Every time he's had that tractor out, the sun has never stopped shining. So maybe you should just keep the cab on, George. But it's an L4 engined, diesel-engined Fordson N. This is a wartime tractor, a dark green colour scheme with the narrow mud wings. The reason for that was because originally they were orange, but the big tractor park at Dagenham at the docks, there was all this area parked up with orange tractors that the Luftwaffe bombers could see quite easily. So they decided to make them green to make them less conspicuous. And then as the wartime shortages started to bite, instead of being full width mud wings, they went to narrow mud wings to reduce the amount of metal they needed. This one has been converted in preservation times with a Perkins L4 diesel engine, much easier for using at ploughing matches. Now, here's a genuine L4 diesel conversion. Ken McKendrick's Fordson E27N. Originally came out as a petrol paraffin tractor just before the war ended in March 1945, but at that time, petrol paraffin was beginning to lose its place, and the Fordson engine design dated back to the first tractor, the MOM in 1917, so it was getting very much outclassed by competitors such as Nuffield and Brown. So they decided to give a diesel alternative. One of them was the Perkins L4, a 4-cylinder diesel. The more famous and more common one was the Perkins P6 diesel. And a P6 Major was a very, very able machine and a very popular machine. Now we have a Ford 36 from Ram Young from Cardenden, launched in 1975, just before the new laws to bring in quiet cabs. So the first sort of 9 months of the 600 series, they were still fitting them with FICO cabs. But then in '76, the quiet cab law came into being, and they had to fit a quiet cab like Alec Harris's 36 behind is fitted with. The famous bubble cab was made by GKN Sankey. It took a wee while to get the design sorted out. Production was a wee bit later than it envisaged, so it was a wee bit late onto the market. They probably could have, when they aimed to have it out when the 600 series was launched, but it was a few months late. But certainly it was out in time for the law changes with quiet tractors.